Dr. Radley Griffin and Dr. Mihaela Telecan here in sunny Florida. And today, with our weekly low carb chats, we're going to be talking about gut health. How are you today before we get started?
Hello, I am, I wanted to say alive, but that would be a negative answer. I'm
Right.
well, I'm very busy, good kind of busy, but nevertheless, I can feel a little bit of pressure, like when you have too much on your plate.
Right, right.
But saying something about Florida, is the first cool day. Is it cool there where you are?
It's very nice here. It's in the 70s, and we're in
Yes.
Tampa, and it's just really, really great. And we get so few of these days, so we're enjoying it. So how about
Yes,
you?
yes. It's actually cool. This morning I was able to open the windows and keep them open the whole day so far.
Nice, very nice. Well, very good. Well, I think this is a topic that a lot of people are interested in. Probably people aren't mentioning their issues with gut health. I think, to be perfectly honest, myself, and I think you've even mentioned your own impetus to get started with low carb was to heal your gut. And I'll say personally, as a side effect, I feel my gut has healed. And it's to the point to where now if something is upsetting to my gut, I know exactly what it was that I had that caused it. And that's just so freeing to actually know what is causing the problem and to change course if need be. But I think too often people are in a state to where they're eating foods and drinking items, and they're just not feeling terrific, and they're not quite sure what it is, and they'll eliminate dairy, or they will eliminate gluten, and so we want to talk a little bit about that today, get some guidance, and talk about really what is low carb doing for our gut health. We've heard the term leaky gut. We want to talk about that today. So I'll turn it over to you, and we'll get started talking about leaky gut and what does that mean for us.
Yes, I want to say hi everyone. I saw some friends there, and I think we have even some questions or suggestions for what we should cover. And thank you for showing up live, and also thank you for watching our replay later, as this is definitely a subject that's near and dear to my heart, because I guess that's my weakest system, the gut. Each one of us has a weak system, so when we get sick, that's where we get and we feel the ill health, and
Right.
And one of the systems that's less strong for me was the gut. And when I think of gut health, I'm thinking of cellular health, because we bring it down all the way to that single enterocyte, the cell that makes the gut lining, that is responsible for the absorption of nutrients. Like we eat food, big molecules, they are broken down by enzymes. Of course, we chew them, hopefully. And then that's such an important aspect of healing the gut, really. It seems like what's the right word? Not common sense. Like, yeah, you don't have to say that, but we do have to say that, because most of us don't chew. And It really begins to how well we chew our food, because our stomach doesn't have teeth. So we want to help our stomach. When we don't chew well, the body the stomach has to produce more acid to break down the food. So it goes from solid to liquid. So it gets into that narrow tube, the small intestine.
Yeah.
And then the enzymes coming from the pancreatic juices are working on the food, breaking it down to smaller particles, and eventually to the different segments of the small intestine. Other enzymes, intestinal enzymes that are produced there in this single cell unit, the enterocytes are breaking down complex sugars, complex protein molecules or polypeptides into single sugars or single amino acids, and this is how they get absorbed from the gut into the bloodstream, and then they are carried into the system and They provide us with nutrients and energy and everything we need. So I look at healing the gut as healing at the cellular level and at a symbiotic level, meaning to heal this absorptive cell, we really have to have a good relationship with the flora, the microbes that live inside of our gut. They share this common organ with us.
Okay.
So if the gut is populated with healthy microbes, a good balance between the good and the bad and those transient ones that come and go,
right,
then we expect to have a healthy gut lining and to absorb nutrients. Therefore, if we eat wholesome foods, we should have energy and feel good.
Right.
Healthy. So now, leaky gut, going back, what does it mean? So the way our gut functions, it's like a barrier, semi-permeable barrier, meaning it allows passage from the gut into the bloodstream or certain molecules of certain size. So that's the semi-permeability. Basically, what we put in our mouth doesn't just get into the bloodstream freely. It has to be of a certain size, right? So I like to use as an illustration a healthy gut. It's like a cheesecloth.
Okay.
Very small holes, and when we strain something through a cheesecloth, only the liquid passes to. Yes, you are in the right place, Maria. You cannot hear us? So only the.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I hope. Maybe we should ask our viewers if they can hear us.
Can everyone hear us? I hope so.
I hope so too. They said, "Are we in the right place?" So the idea of because if I use this illustration, I think everybody can relate to it. If I strain something through to a cheesecloth, the solids remain, the liquids will pass through, right? So only the right molecules get into the bloodstream, which is important when it comes to immune system and food recognition or nutrients recognition. Versus a leaky gut, when the gut becomes leaky, imagine it turns into a pasta strainer. You know those big pasta strainer with big holes where you strain if you have like spaghetti, even the spaghettis pass through.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's kind of how you can imagine a leaky gut, where the gut now is no longer semi-permeable, it becomes more permeable. So larger molecules, whether it's toxins, parasites, bacteria, or partially digested or undigested food, have free access from the gut into the bloodstream.
Okay.
And what's the problem with that? The problem is in our immune system, it's our defense mechanism. So the cells of the immune system are pre-programmed to recognize what's safe, for instance, to recognize amino acids or to recognize glucose or galactose, the molecules that come from food upon digestion. But when we get into the bloodstream, certain toxins or parasites or bacteria or big peptide molecules, few amino acids bound together, or 2 molecules of sugar bound together. So basically food in a non-recognizable form by the immune system, that leads to an immune reaction against the food we eat. And that's where we have many people not with true food allergies, but with food sensitivities or intolerances. So we start to drive inflammation from the gut by the foods we eat. And now it's not necessarily a problem with the food. The food can be wholesome organic broccoli or chicken or grass-fed beef or the egg that comes from the farm. But if the form in which is absorbed into the bloodstream is not the correct form, the immune system will trigger a response against the food.
Right.
Hence, you have a reaction to gluten or to another protein that comes from food. Usually reactions come to are caused by proteins, like undigested molecules of protein, more than to carbohydrates. But nevertheless, we react to foods we eat.
Okay.
So a common practice is to do elimination diets.
Yeah.
Right? And there are very many laboratory tests that will test for this leaky gut, to see if a person has a leaky gut and to what degree, and or to test for the food sensitivities, like what foods do you react to.
Right.
And these are all great. In my practice and the way I look at it, I don't start with testing, because in my experience, everybody has some degree of leaky gut, some more severe than other. So the intervention I use is not changed by the lab result.
Right, right.
So I start with a broad elimination diet that's based on the GAPS nutritional protocol. I mentioned that before. Or I created my own using all the knowledge I acquired throughout time. I call it gut reset.
Okay.
Protocol. That's the one I talk in my book. So we eliminate the foods that we know contribute to foster this leakiness of the gut. So we eliminate these foods by default, and we see how much improvement the person gets without having to spend the money on the testing.
Right.
And based on the results, individually working with a client, I may say, okay, let's do a food sensitivity test, because maybe you actually react to the chicken and you drink chicken stock every day.
Let me back up a little bit, because yes. I think I want to, being in the medical arena, or more close to it, I would say, referring to specialists, things like this. I really think there's a huge disconnect between our population at large and the medical community. Full disclosure, the medical community does not know everything, even though we pretend to. And then when we have a hard time saying things that we don't have a clue on, because we're, as doctors, we're expected to know a lot, or at least steer our patients in the right direction. So when patients come to doctors or their GI specialist, and they're having these complaints of bloating, I know that every time I eat something, I don't feel good. I feel bad. I have a skin reaction. I have a headache, or my stools are unformed. I'm having diarrhea several times a day. In the medical community, we just attach a term called irritable bowel syndrome, right? A very broad net that it really could capture every single person on this planet as having an irritable bowel at some point. Or inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and there's some others that are on there, but we don't have a good handle on this. And I think a lot of physicians, and initially me included, when patients come in and they mention things like leaky gut, for instance, in the beginning it sort of raised a red flag. And I think things that raise a red flag to physicians are mainly because we don't understand them. We don't have a good explanation for it. And it's tough for us, because if we don't have a good solution, we chalk it up to quackery, or this patient is crazy, or we make some sort of derogatory thought or comment. And so I wanted to kind of lay the lay of the land out there for this is what exists in the community. And I think it's important for us to have a good discussion, because this is real. We all experience it. And no matter what you call it or the theory behind it, if we can provide solutions, I think that's going to be a great thing. So to back up a little bit more, we talked about leaky gut. Well, what causes it to begin with in most people?
It's not one single factor that leads to because basically anatomically what happens, we start to loosen the tight junctions. So we know gluten has a loosening effect. It makes us lose that glue, that zonulin, that protein that keeps the interocytes together.
Okay.
So when they separate, that's when we lose the semi-permeability capacity of the gut. So it can be toxins from the food. It can be toxins from the bad bacteria in our gut. The food itself, like molecules such as gluten. There's more. I think Alexander Fizanos is his name. He's a researcher that has mostly described this phenomenon of leaky gut and the tight junctions that are affected by gluten.
Okay.
Alessandro Fizanos is an Italian name, but he's here in the United States. So it's multifactorial again.
Sure.
Apparently, a big role in this leaky gut syndrome, aside from the food and the toxins and the microbes, is actually played by the imbalance in gut flora. That's why it's so important to have a healthy gut flora, healthy balanced gut flora. I like to use this illustration. The human health is like a tree. So when you see a healthy human, you can imagine it as the fruits of a tree. Well, for a tree to have healthy leaves and fruits, it has to have strong roots in a strong soil. And then, of course, it has to have the nutrients and the water and the right amount of sunlight. So our roots are actually the state of the gut. But the soil that really keeps everything in check is the balance of the gut flora.
Okay.
That's kind of the analogy I like to use. So taking antibiotics, being exposed to chlorine from water or fluoride, drugs, stress, prescription medication, prednisone, the contraceptive pill, so many factors impact this delicate balance of the microorganisms we host, starting from birth, basically, whether we are born through C-section versus vaginal birth.
Absolutely.
It goes beyond to how healthy the mother and the father were, how healthy was their gut flora during conception, throughout pregnancy, and throughout the delivery process. So it really can be traced back.
Yes,
but nevertheless,
very complex.
Yes. Nevertheless, if we think how our ancestors lived, they did not live in sterile environments. They didn't have antimicrobial soaps. They didn't have sterile anything. On the contrary, they live very in much proximity with the earth. They were exposed to the germs, but it's always a healthy exchange between the germs from earth and nature and the human body. Of course, they died of infectious diseases. Sure. We know that. So it was good when the antibiotics were discovered. But now we are in a different extreme. So we've got to find the happy medium where we actually make an effort to expose ourselves to healthy microbes.
Got it. Well, let's talk about
when we have these healthy microbes, then we can expect to have these healthy roots, which is the gut, and then from there, the healthy body.
So when we recognize,
did I answer the question?
So when we talk, you did. When we're talking about, that most of us are experiencing these symptoms of leaky gut, potentially at one point or another in our life, or either chronically, and we talk about it's caused by inflammation, damage to the small intestines, where these tight junctions or basically the lining of the small intestine become more permeable, or they allow larger food particles to enter the bloodstream. This is the theory behind leaky gut, which triggers the immune system to create turmoil in our bodies. And so if we've established the theory behind leaky gut, or for many people, the reality, how do we start to heal this? So you mentioned the food elimination.
Right. I would like to go over that a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
That has to do with the carbs.
Yes. Okay.
I hear an echo again. Is it okay? The sound on your end?
No echo here.
It goes good. It cleared. So what is interesting, because our chat is low carb, high fat, right? And we've talked so far about the metabolic impact of having these insulinogenic carbohydrates. Well, the good news is when we remove these carbohydrates, which are new to human history, we actually help heal the gut. Because the same carbohydrates are causing damage in two ways. Let's put it this way. When we have starch, we don't have these enzymes I talked that are produced at the enterocyte level, the brush border enzymes. It's too technical. I don't want to confuse people. But anyway, when we are lacking these enzymes that break down, they separate the complex molecules of glucose, whether they are coming from starch or from sugar or from milk. So we can absorb them as single glucose or fructose or galactose. These are the three single monosaccharides we can safely receive in the blood. If we lack these enzymes, all that undigested carbohydrate gets actually into the large intestine and feeds more of the bad bacteria than the good bacteria.
Okay.
So kind of it's like a self-enforced cycle. We eat the starches, they keep supporting the growth of bad microorganisms, so we can't heal the gut. We can't produce those enzymes to actually digest the food properly and absorb it properly. So that's one way, and that's how it helps. We eliminate those carbs. That's why this nutritional protocol that aims to heal the gut allows only carbohydrates that are easy, that absorb without the need of an enzyme. At the brush border, and that's
sugar.
fruit.
No sugar, no dairy.
Sugar is glucose and fructose bound together. Honey has glucose and fructose, but they're not tied together. So no need for enzymes to absorb. Fruits, same thing, glucose, fructose separate. And the more ripe the fruit, the better.
Interesting.
So that's from an absorptive point of view. Doesn't mean it doesn't raise insulin, right? So we have to see what we are talking. Right now we are talking about let's help the gut heal. So that's why we can eat honey or fruits if we want to heal the gut. So we eliminate starches basically and all other complex carbohydrates. The diet, the foundation of the diet is called specific carbohydrate diet. It's been around for since I think 1800s. However, it dropped in popularity when gluten was discovered. So when we discovered gluten and we realized the connection between gut, gluten, brain, right, with people with schizophrenia and epilepsy and all those gut-brain connections, that's when a specific carbohydrate diet dropped in popularity and gluten took over. So we started with the gluten-free diets.
Got it.
But gluten is just a small part of the big problem we have with those complex carbs. Right, and gluten is the protein, the gliadin molecule, and it's also the starch that comes with the gluten. So that's why grains are eliminated, legumes, starchy vegetables, corn, potatoes, and such.
Yeah, and how long would we when we eliminate those things? Do we do one at a time? Do we eliminate altogether?
Best is all together. I mean, you can taper it off. Again, you can do all at once. You eliminate all at once and you just keep fruits and honey.
Yeah.
Or you do 1 week, you eliminate grains. The next week, you eliminate milk and legumes. The next week, you eliminate starchy vegetables. So you take about 3 to 4 weeks. It all depends on the person's readiness, on the person's food intake, like how much of their food intake is based on these foods. How shocking would that be for the system or for the mind to embrace the change?
And how long would you give it? How long should a person give this? As long as it takes?
To initiate the elimination?
Well, to once they've eliminated, whether they do it over a week type pattern, over 4 weeks, and then once everything has been eliminated that has a potential exacerbator of gut irritation, how long does that healing process take? Typically,
everybody's unique, but you can expect a year to 2 years.
So this is devotion.
Yes, it takes time. Yeah. Damage doesn't happen overnight, and it's not only the food we eliminate. We have to take care of all the other elements that are involved. But that's by and large what the elimination diet is based on. And the second aspect of this elimination is fiber, actually.
Okay.
Because when we have irritable bowel or ulcerative colitis, we have inflammation and ulcerations in the gut lining, especially if they are with diarrhea. fiber comes in and cause, especially insoluble fiber, comes in and adds to the irritation. It's like having an ulceration on your skin and you're taking a brush and you're scrubbing it.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't feel good. So soluble fiber could be is gentler and could be better tolerated, versus insoluble fiber, more that comes from like the cell wall of the plants, of the vegetables, including grains. So there are people that they have to eliminate all plant foods at the beginning. It's almost like a modified fast, because their gut is so inflamed and so raw that they can't tolerate anything. And then we start with only cooked, including fruits, nothing raw, only cooked, and the fiber has to be small. But these are extreme cases. For most people, it helps just to eliminate this, and they can continue to eat cooked and raw vegetables. It all depends. But that's kind of the elimination part. But that's not enough. To heal the gut, we've got to bring also the nutrients that feed the enterocyte, the gut lining, right? And the good thing is that these cells of the gut we have a question there. The enterocytes, they turn over. They have a short lifespan because they are hardworking cells. So every 2 to 3 days, 72 hours, the body produces new ones. So if we keep away those foods that, they're causing problems with regards to the digestion, and we bring in the healing elements that provide the amino acids that help nourish the gut lining, and the right amount of composition of fats, we regenerate or rebuild the gut lining. And those are the concentrates that come from mainly joints of the animals with cartilages. So we extract glutamine and collagen. So good examples would be making meat and bone stocks, either on big bones with bone marrow, as well as big joints. Or if we talk smaller animals like chicken, we would want chicken wings, you would want chicken feet, you would want necks. The more joints, tails, like if you talk of an ox tail, the more joints you have, and you make a concentrate, an extract of this, the more healing that soup or stock or gelatin is for the gut lining and for the immune system.
Let's a clarification here. So I think with extreme cases, we are recommending up to 1 to 2 years of a particular food elimination before reintroducing. But what is a signal to the body that we could? So, for instance, we are low carb. We like the idea of having the fats from our dairy coming back into our life. At what point could we safely reintroduce, say dairy, for instance?
In fact, dairy, like milk, again, about 1.5 to 2 years into, and any complex carb, whether it's starch or the double sugar in milk, lactose, you would introduce, let's say, for about 6 months, you're free of symptoms. Whatever symptoms were particular to you, bloating, gas, diarrhea, alternating with constipation, mood, anxiety, skin issues, you name it. I mean, it's the spectrum of symptoms is wide. But with regards to the fats that are coming from dairy, for instance, sour cream or heavy cream, or even fermented dairies like yogurt and kefir, those are introduced if the person doesn't have a true allergy to dairy products right from the beginning, because they are the good kind of fats, and being fermented, especially like sour cream, for example, it's easier, it's pre-digested basically by the beneficial microorganisms. It's a good fatty composition, plus it helps re-inoculate the gut, which is the third aspect of this gut reset protocol. We have 3 phases. We want to eliminate what's causing damage. we want to bring in the healing building blocks for the gut lining, and we want to rebalance gut flora, and we do that with fermented foods and therapeutic strength probiotics.
Okay.
So there are 3 phases, and they interchange. It's not like we do the elimination, then we do this, then we do that. We kind of do them all at the same time. So we support the healing from all directions. And that's the food aspect of healing the gut. Then we have stress that we have to take into account, and all other factors.
Let's talk a little bit about the fermented foods, and then perhaps we talk a little bit about the probiotic role. What are your favorite fermented food choices?
I like all fermented vegetables from sauerkraut, and I make them, and I have recipes. Actually, I put them in my book, by the way. I give away the traditional recipes that I learned from my parents, the way we make it back in Romania. Very, very different than they are made in US, at least, but from all the recipes I've seen. And it's easy to make, sauerkraut.
Okay.
Any vegetable can be lacto-fermented. Cucumbers, green tomatoes, okra, Brussels sprouts. And the recipe is very similar. Like once you learn how to make the sauerkraut for the juice, because it's one that you make it for the kraut itself and one that you make it for the brine, you can make any lacto-ferment any vegetable. Okay. And there are quite a few on the market that people can buy now. Okay. When you buy a fermented vegetable, look for it so it's not pasteurized, number one, because you don't want to have the probiotics pasteurized, right? You want to take them live. And it doesn't have a true lacto-ferment. It will not have vinegar added to it. That's pickled. It's a difference. We want the natural fermentation to take place, so we take in those beneficial microorganisms. Kimchi is popular. Then we have all sorts of kefir, like whether it's dairy based or coconut water kefir, and people can buy the grains and make their own at home. Yogurt, I encourage people and I teach people to make their own yogurt. It's very easy to make it. Versus buying from the store, which comes pasteurized and has gums. Usually all those products, they have gum because the yogurt is the solid and is the whey that will tend to separate, to float on top. Unless it's Greek yogurt where the whey is extracted. That's why the Greek yogurt is so thick and it has higher protein content per volume compared to regular yogurt. So for food manufacturers to prevent that separation, they add gums. So the gums bind together the liquid and the solid. So you don't have that. Most people don't like to see a yogurt. A homemade yogurt is not as thick as the one in the store. Again, unless it's a Greek yogurt. Yeah. So it requires an acquired taste, maybe for people that are used to the store-bought one, but I always encourage to try to ferment your own. There are many places, at least here in Florida where we live, that sell raw milk. It will say not for human consumption. I would say Coca-Cola is not for human consumption.
Or Gatorade.
If I may. Or Gatorade. Right. Milk is for human. Could be, but that's also debatable, right? Are we the only mammals that drink the milk? Yeah. But let's say it's safe to have it if it's raw and you ferment it. And then you can add your own vanilla to it or fresh berries if you want to flavor it. You don't have to buy the store-bought that comes with artificial flavors and colorings. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, if for a guy like me who finds it difficult to get into making my own yogurt, what would you recommend for me? I do the Sunday shopping in our family, so when I'm on the yogurt aisle, and we want to provide those cultures for our family, which one should I pick up?
I don't think there's any brand that doesn't have gums added to it and they're not ultra pasteurized, unless you buy directly. I'm lucky here we have a farm that brings the raw milk, heavy cream, butter, yogurt from the farm.
We have that here in Tampa as well.
That's what I would buy.
It takes
and you have actually in Tampa Full Circle Farm delivers there, which they are great. I used to buy from them when I was in Jacksonville, and I love their products.
Okay.
They have the A2 milk. We won't go into all that, but high standard quality.
Okay.
The way they raise the animals, really pasture and grass fed and wild and all the good stuff. Anyway, so it's easy to make yogurt your own if you can't find the source that makes it for you.
I'll
buy a probiotic,
and then if not, I'll explore the making of it. Very.
It's easy. I have a video on my website. I can bring the link in the chat here so people can see. And same with sour cream. You make the exact same way. You take the heavy cream, you add a probiotic. That's another way to test the quality of the probiotic you're buying. You culture the milk or the yogurt, the heavy cream with the probiotic you take. If it cultures the milk, voila, it's live cultures. If it doesn't, don't buy it because you're buying some powder. But
well, talk about probiotics, because a lot of people, my patients included, and we had a question regarding probiotics. When are you advising the introduction of a probiotic? Should me and you take a probiotic who I feel I have a good gut health at the time? Should I take a probiotic or get my cultures from our fermented foods? And what is the general advice out there for the average person who's healthy and does not have any gut issues?
Great question. I would say best is always to get it from foods. Again, this whether it's fermented vegetables or it's fermented dairy products or non-dairy. I make cashew cheese, for example, as an example. Anything really can be fermented. That's ideal, but we probably can't get everyday fermented food, so it's not a bad idea to add as a supplement a probiotic. Again, there are so many out there. I encourage people, if they can find a practitioner that carries probiotics in their office, to get it to the practitioners, because they most likely are getting it from companies that have third-party testing. So because there's no real regulation when it comes to supplements, and you go to the store and you hope that you buy a good one, but again, you have no way of knowing. They are room temperature probiotics. They are refrigerated. I prefer the refrigerated ones. I personally buy from Protera. I feel like they are really specialized, Protera and Clary Labs, in probiotics and enzymes. So that's my go-to when it comes to probiotic sources. Theirs are all refrigerated. Some are, like for my GAPS patients, my gut people, they have a specific probiotic that's not cultured using any of those complex carbs. And also they're not cultured on dairy products. So in terms of allergenic and gut acceptance, they're very good. They don't have the inulin, for example, because someone with very severe leaky gut will not tolerate inulin or fructooligosaccharides, which are prebiotics. But by and large, it's okay to buy a probiotic. You can take it with food, not on empty stomach. It's a good idea to take it at night because it also helps with the immune system. So overnight, it will absorb and it will help not only with the gut lining, but also balance the immune system. It's okay to chew it in your mouth to help rebalance oral flora, which is so crucial when it comes to gum health and overall health. Because again, microbes, we have them on our skin, on our scalp, in our mouth. All our body is covered in, but the bulk of them are in the large intestine.
Okay, very good. Well, this is good. And when should a person not take a probiotic?
Good question. A good point. I wanted to mention that whether you start fermented foods or probiotics, you want to go slowly, especially if you never have them or had them before, and if you have severe leaky gut. Because what happens when we bring in the good guys, it's almost like taking a good antibiotic. It will kill the bad microorganisms, and in that process more toxins are released from the gut. It's called die off.
Yes.
So in the process of bad microorganism dying off, we absorb more toxins are coming in from the gut into the bloodstream, especially if you have leaky gut. And that's when we exacerbate symptoms. So we want to control this. That's why we start with small amounts. So some people are very sensitive and they only can take drops of sauerkraut juice, for example, without having a severe headache or bloating or joint aches. Everybody has different. People would usually have the symptoms that are typical to their ill health.
Yeah.
It will get worse before it was. So you just go slowly. You take the smallest dose that you tolerate without having very, very bad adverse reaction, and you increase each day as the body will tolerate, and that's how you do it.
No, I think that's really, really great. And you know, I really appreciate you today because this is so helpful for me in my own practice, my own education. Again, representing the medical community, this is just not something we have a terrific handle on. And unfortunately, that makes us feel uncomfortable. And that's obviously when your health practitioner is uncomfortable, the only people that suffer are our patients in our community. So this has been extremely helpful for me, and I would like I might be posting my own questions here at the end of our talk here. So this has been really great. So some of the things I want to see if there's anything else that we wanted to cover. I think we answered all the questions in our comment section.
I thought we want to mention about the low carb and gut.
Yeah, so one of the things we did want to talk about was because we have some people who are trying low carb, or they're starting and they feel like, gosh, I can't stick with it because it upsets my gut and that doesn't work for me. And it's really discouraging for obviously the person trying it, because we talk about it, what a wonderful way of life it is, but then when they take something and they don't tolerate it, what are some ways they can troubleshoot, or what are the problems they're facing? Is it the actual diet itself, or is it an underlying leaky gut? Is it intolerance of fats? What are some common things you see?
So we're going to come back to your question, Maria. So two things come to my mind when people tell me that they have, of course, first I would like to know what's the GI effect that you feel. Sometimes when people go from high carb standard American diet to low carb, they go for the crutches that involve some form of sweetener, and sugar alcohols are common or an ingredient in most of those low carb foods that are still tasting sweet, right? So sugar alcohols can cause severe gut irritation, bloating, diarrhea, gas. Personally, and people have different tolerance to it. Personally, I can't tolerate any. I shouldn't say any, actually. Out of all of them, erythritol is a little bit less stressful to the gut, but most sugar alcohols, and especially if they come in high amount, they will cause gut distress. So that could be one thing. The other one is if they all of a sudden add a lot of fat, it could be the fat too, that they the liver has to remember to produce more bile and to store it in the gallbladder and to release it all at once, so it will emulsify fats properly. So I think that's why sometimes I feel like it's better to go slowly in it than to dive in it, especially if you come from a very high carb intake and very low fat.
And I have a question here that we received. And so what happens when we're on our high fat diet and we can actually consume too much fat, instigating a diarrhea that occurs?
You cut back on fat.
Yeah.
Number one, that means it's too much. You don't have enough bile to help you emulsify that fat. You can add the digestive enzyme that comes with ox bile. But best is to look at how much fat you have and not don't if maybe you have it all in one meal, spread it, or just simply have less until again that you slowly add in, because the body needs time to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely.
To recalibrate.
Well, let's answer Maria's question, and then we'll end our discussion here. This has been so great. So the question is, can you add probiotics if you suspect a leaky gut? And then we talked a little bit in the beginning how long it would take to heal. So maybe we can answer the first question right now. How can you add probiotics if you suspect leaky gut?
You can, and again, you have to start with very small dose. Okay. And increase it as tolerant. You want to manage the symptoms that will come from taking the probiotics. So, for example, if you take a capsule that comes with 12 billion CFUs, colony forming units, and you feel you have bloating, you nauseous, headache, whatever symptoms, you just feel, oh, this has to be the probiotic. You have to cut back. So you stop it altogether until the symptoms go away, and then you start maybe with a quarter of the capsule or half of you kind of have to, figure it out. How much can you take safely without having severe ill effects from it, until the gut slowly brings things back to balance. It's a process. That's why this protocol, the healing itself takes time. It's like peeling the layers of the onion all the way to get to the core of it. It takes time, layer by layer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of those things. There's so many things of where we see sort of rapid healing from low carb, high fat when the changeovers happen. And I think the lesson that I'm learning here is to really be patient with this process. It takes time. We've injured our gut through years and years and decades of our environment, even things we haven't done. We inherit it from our parents and our environment. So the lesson here is for us to be patient with the process, and hopefully over time we see the good results. So this is great.
But I just want to say something. We all don't. When you start a life process like this, ox bile, if you go to health stores, they carry those. Try not to think of 2 years or 1 year or 3 months. Just think of today, because what you think you can't be without today, 2 years from now, you will it wasn't even cross your mind. I'm 5 years into low carb, and my gut is pretty well. I won't say it's perfect, and I don't know if it's ever gonna be perfect. When I'm stressed, I start to have again the same symptoms where I get more bloating, and I burp. That's my thing. I know when I burp, it's like, okay, am I stressed again? What's going on? But I don't miss any of the foods because I feel so much better now. It's just that you don't even think about it. So just take it one day at a time. Think of how you feel today, how you want to feel. Okay, I feel this way, but I really want to feel that way. And then food is just the vehicle that takes you to where you want to be.
This is really great. Well, as always, thank you so much. And I learned so much this week, and I know our viewers have as well. And for everyone out there, please send your questions in. This is a very complex topic, a very important topic. If we don't heal our guts, I really don't think we can get to that next level, because when our guts don't feel good, we just don't feel good. And it starts young. I mean, it starts at a colicky baby, right? So
exactly.
Is very, very important for us. So this is great. Please ask the questions, and we'll be back next week to
I just want to invite our listeners and viewers to I'm almost ready to publish the book. It will be in December.
Okay.
And this is my first public announcement with regards to this. I'm putting together a launch book theme. So if anybody would be interested to be part of this theme, the title of the book is called Make Peace with Fat, and it has a subtitle, Applying Ancestral Wisdom and Modern Nutrition to Reversing Chronic Diseases, Resetting Hunger, Increasing Energy, and Optimizing Performance. Long title. It really does all of this. I
couldn't type that fast, so I just said...
I know. I will, but what I'm trying to say, I talk in the book about this gut reset protocol and metabolic protocol because they overlap so much. They complement each other. So if anybody is interested to learn about the book and to participate in this launch, to be part of my launching theme,
okay,
PM me or make a comment here in the chat, and I will send you information to what it means to be part of this launching team.
Okay, wonderful. That is so great. I can't wait to read it myself. We talked.
I will send you today. You are going to get, and everybody that will be part of the team will already get access to the PDF of the book.
Okay.
And then basically give me reviews and feedback and all that. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Luminita. So yes, it's exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is so great. Well, we'll be back next week for our weekly discussion. If any topic ideas come to mind for anyone out there, please leave it in our comment section, and we'll see everyone next week.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.